How's it going? How's it going, everyone? Welcome, welcome. This is the Conscious Chicano. Let's see here. Welcome, everyone. This is the Conscious Chicano. I'm actually let's see here. Let me get this started. I'll just wait for some people to show up. I'm using okay, here's it go. I'm waiting for some people. I'm just trying to get started here. I'm using a new stream. Let's see here. I'll just wait for some people to show up. Take my time on this one. Welcome, everyone. This is the Conscious Chicano. This is I'm actually on a different stream at this time, so it's something new to me here. I have to figure out how to work this one out. Let me actually click on something. Let's see here if this will work. Oh, there you go. Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the Conscious Chat number 11. The topic is Chicano Urban Apologetics. Yes, I'll be doing some of this as well. If you guys don't know what Chicano Urban Apologetics is, I break it down where it's a Chicano perspective on Christianity, decolonial Christianity, like liberation theology, Chicano native theology, and it's actually a response to all the misinformation about Christianity, and a lot of it's coming from, say, the native Chicano indigenous misinformation on Christianity, and a lot of times it's coming from Western atheists, the New Age, the occultists out there, pantheists, etc. Even the Black Conscious movement too. There's a lot of misinformation, pseudoscience, a lot of cults out there that basically twist the Bible around, twist Scripture around, present half-truths about Christianity, and don't give you a real, complete context of it. So as a Chicano urban apologist, I'm here actually to respond to some of the false beliefs out here and about Christianity. So welcome everyone. I guess some people didn't show up today, so that's fine with me. They'll probably be entering a little later. So Chicano Urban Apologetics is if you guys don't know what apologetics is, means it's like a defense of Christianity. That's what apologetics is all about. Mainstream apologetics is kind of like responding to atheists and agnostics and anti-Christians out here. They a lot of times they try to say God doesn't exist, or they try to say Jesus is a myth, or Christianity is the worst religion ever in history. There's so much stuff that they say about Christianity, and I found out some of it's also coming from the Masons as well, with their pseudo history, pseudo information as well. Secret societies out here, even Satanists. A lot of them are intertwined, the Satanists and the secret societies. So they come out with this false history of Jesus. And I know about all this stuff because I used to be in those communities. I used to be in the conscious communities. I'm still involved, but I have a different twist to it. But I know about the Black conscious community. I was involved in them, with a lot of their. I used to read a lot of their books, be part of their different communities. I've been involved in the Conscious Chicano communities for a long time, and I hear what they're saying. And I used to believe that. I used to be very anti-Christian. You could say that I was kind of like Paul, persecuting the Christians. And even debating them and trying to debunk them. I even wrote papers. I used to be an agnostic, right? I even wrote papers based on Bertrand Russell and why I'm not a Christian. And I was misled by the institutions, the universities, the liberals out there, the liberals, the atheists. A lot of these institutions are Masonic, and so they don't want you to believe in God or in Jesus Christ, nothing like that. And I've taken a lot of courses in the history of religion, the history of Christianity, the history of Jesus, anthropology of religion, philosophy of religion. And what happened is I grew up Christian, and then when I hit the university level, they basically indoctrinate you and brainwash you to hate Christianity. And then you read about the truth, the history, the colonial history of Christianity and how it was used to colonize. The colonizers claimed to be Christian, but they were over there enslaving, murdering, and taking people's lands, right? And so you learn about that, and then you learn as a Chicano about your indigenous history and your culture, and you become filled with anger, right, of what happened to your people, and it even results in hatred towards white people, right? And then I started feeding my mind with stuff from the Nation of Islam about the white man. I started reading about what the natives were saying about the white man and this and that. And some of it's true, some of it's not true. Some of it's exaggerated. I came to realize that whole Nation of Islam, that whole Yaqub story is just a bunch of phony, it's not true, it's just phony information about some evil scientist creating the white race. And it's crazy that a lot of Black conscious people believe this, and even some Chicanos out here that follow the Nation of Islam. I've seen some of them. I've been involved in the whole East LA community. A lot of the Mexicas, right, in the East LA community, they're influenced by the Nation of Islam. And I was influenced by them as well. And don't get me wrong, Farrakhan does have some good information, but I don't agree with his perspectives on everything. And I definitely don't agree with Islam in their perspective on Jesus as well. I studied the historical Jesus, and I know, a lot of the historical facts about Jesus as well. And even when you get into that field, you start, you get brainwashed by the liberals too. The Jesus seminar, how they claim that Jesus never claimed to be God, Messiah, Son of Man, Son of God. All that's a twisted lie as well. If you go and read Dr. Gary Habermas, he actually has some good books debunking the whole Jesus seminar, and he uses their own methodology to show that Jesus did claim to be Son of Man, Son of God, Messiah, and people referred to him as that, and even worshipped him, and even later on were willing to lay their life on down the line due to their experience with Jesus Christ. Okay? And then you got some of these conspiracy people out here in the conspiracy communities and New Age communities that say Jesus never existed. And that's a bunch of nonsense as well. Jesus, there's so much historical evidence that Jesus did exist. All right? So real serious scholars don't take those, they're called mythicists. They don't take those mythicists seriously. People who deny Jesus actually existed. And there's so much evidence of that. And actually, I forgot to mention that I have a certification in apologetics as well. I studied a lot of apologetics. I trained under apologetics. I've read lots of books on apologetics. I read a lot of decolonial liberation theology from a native and brown theological perspective. And, I definitely go into this type of stuff. But back to the whole, the historical Jesus, I actually took a class under a PhD from Harvard, and it's without a doubt that Jesus existed. Jesus definitely existed, and there's so much evidence of that. It's not only just the Bible that he existed, but you have non-biblical sources that he existed. You have Jewish, sources. You have Roman sources. You have different sources that attest. It's called multiple attestation, right? Where many sources acknowledge that he existed. Even his enemies who didn't like him wrote about him. So he must have existed. If he never had existed, then he wouldn't have been mentioned in all these different documents and all these evidence out here. We have actually more historical evidence than a lot of other ancient antiquity histories out here. We have a lot of evidence that Jesus existed. So that evidence debunks a lot of these naysayers out here, especially people in the New Age community and the conspiracy community. And then when it comes to the conspiracy community, they come up with this fake knowledge from the Da Vinci Code, It's false. And I found out a lot of it is coming from the Masons. It's Holy Blood, Holy Grail, the Da Vinci Code, all this pseudoscience about Jesus, and claiming that, that there's a bloodline, and this and that. The Masons actually believe in that, but they made that all up. That there's a bloodline of Jesus, that Jesus went and had children and this and that, and just ridiculous beliefs. But this is what these satanic secret societies believe in. So we have to question and debunk all this Da Vinci Code, zeitgeist, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, New Ager, Masonic, false information about Jesus, and get to the facts about Jesus. And yeah, that's part of the problem right there. And then you got the New Agers out here, you know, pushing this whole Christ consciousness and basically reinterpreting Jesus into something else, something other than what he actually is, you know, and basically equating him to the Buddha and Muhammad and Krishna and everybody else, you know, trying to equate him to all of them, when in fact what makes Jesus distinct from the rest of them is that he resurrected. He resurrected, and there's so much about Jesus that makes him even particular. You know, the fact that he came and exposed the enemy, and he started casting out demons everywhere. He was like the ultimate deliverance, say, teacher. And, you know, if you guys don't know what deliverance ministry is, it's kind of like what people known as exorcists, right? There's like ministers that, you know, there's Christians that cast out demons, right? And I've been involved in a lot of this deliverance ministries and all that, and I've seen demons manifest, and I've seen the power of God cast them out. So one of my evidences that Jesus is real and the power of God is real is when you have someone who's possessed by demons, and you have someone who's filled with Christ and uses the authority of Christ to cast out demons, and then you see these demons screaming and they're coming out, and the person changes after that. That's the supernatural evidence that Christ is powerful, that he's real, that God is real, you know. And this kind of experience debunks the atheists out here, the naysayers out here. How's it going? Casual Conversations. Good to see you here. Let me just make you the moderator. Let's see here. Let's see here. I'm on another platform at this moment. Let's see here. Welcome people who just joined me. I see a lot of people joining me on Instagram as well. I'm on YouTube and Instagram. So let me just try to see if I can add you as a moderator, because I'm actually on a different stream right now. StreamYard is actually limiting my streams, so I had to go on a different one, Streamlabs. And let me just add. Here it goes. Oh, there it goes. Let's see here. Oh, okay. So Casual Conversation is I made you the standard moderator, so every time you enter here, you can if you see anybody acting weird in the chat room, or, you know, being disrespectful or just getting off topic, go ahead and regulate. You know. So definitely welcome. Thank you for joining. And if you have any questions, definitely send me some questions related to the topic. I'm talking about Chicano urban apologetics. And right now the conversation led to the existence of God. So I know a lot of people in the Chicano community, the Conscious Chicano community, the decolonization community, the indigenous community, they end up embracing what's called pantheism and atheism, and they don't. I just saw actually an article somebody posted, and they have this thing about so in the Mexica indigenous community, there's two schools of thought. One actually believes in say a creator, right? They call their creator Ometeotl, right? It's a dual creator in some sense. It's like a dualistic deity or God, and then they don't even like us to even use the word God. So they say everything you meant the word God or gods, that's Western. So I guess you gotta just use their own language, right? But then there's others who are kind of like atheists. They're pantheists. They believe in they're almost like New Agers. They believe in the universe, right? Or just Mother Earth. Or some of them, believe in the sun, like, they like the pyramid of the sun and all that. Or they just believe in what's called Theot, or some say Teteo, where they just believe in some kind of cosmic force out there or something like Taoism, some kind of like ultimate reality, right? That's kind of like without a personality. It's just some, kind of like some kind of objective reality that exists out there that's where everything else somehow is part of, interconnected with, and I guess it's just like, it's almost like calling it the Tao in Taoism, and I'm getting suspicious from this community that they're actually packaging the whole Taoist belief and calling it Mexicayo, So I'm a little skeptical of that perspective as well. So coming from an indigenous perspective, there's natives who do believe in the creator. Some say, the creator is the great mystery, right? Or they have different names for the creator, right? And so here's the difference when it comes to the indigenous people. It's like some don't believe in the creator, some believe in deities. And hello? Uh-oh, looks like my stream just paused. So some don't believe in the creator, but they believe in many deities. And then there's others that they don't believe in any deities, and they don't believe in the creator. So they kind of just believe in the universe in some sense, almost like the New Agers, right? They just pray to the earth, right? Oh, okay, cool, thank you. So you have these different perspectives, and there's probably even more perspectives, but these are like kind of the major ones. So some believe in the creator, some believe in many different deities, some just believe in Mother Earth or the universe or something, or the sun or something, or the moon. So you have these different beliefs here. And the way I am is, when it comes to native beliefs, I believe in the creator as the source of everything. That's what I believe in. And I actually talked to like various native scholars and elders, and from what I hear is that there was a PhD guy named Dr. Randy Woodley, and he says he's talked to a lot of natives out here in the United States. And I asked him, would you say the majority of natives out here don't believe in a God? They're pantheists? And he said no. They actually, most of them believe in the Creator, and they're not pantheists. So that was very interesting. He says he spent lots of years with different tribes out here, and he's written lots of books on it. You know, he's very involved in the indigenous community, and I'm involved in what's called the Good Medicine Way, and he's sometimes he shows up there. It's like a native Christian community. We believe in decolonial native theology, but we also respect the native, culture and history, and when it comes to theology, there's two perspectives on theology. One is that there's a general revelation where even Paul talks about it, like, there's like, everyone has a sense that there's a creator, right, of everything, right? That's general revelation in theology. And then there's specific revelation, or revealed revelation, like specific is believing that Jesus Christ is God the Son of Man, Son of God, Messiah, and he came to reveal the great mystery. And as Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, right? And so, and even Paul talks about, prior to Jesus even coming to the earth, God was in some sense a great mystery, right? And so Jesus gave us this revelation of the Godhood, right, of God, and he showed us that. So when it comes to natives, I would say some of them had a sense of God, of the Creator, in their own language, right? But then some of them believed in different deities, and I found out a lot of the ones that believed in these different deities, a lot of them were doing human sacrifice or doing different weird stuff out there that's not really ethical, And so this is from actually my studies in Mesoamerican culture. A lot of them believed in a bunch of deities where they require, human blood, human sacrifice. And you find this all throughout the world. And in the Bible and Christianity, they talk about fallen angels, right? The fallen angels, and many people say that the Greek gods, all these different deities around the earth, are the fallen angels. And they deceived humankind to offer human sacrifice to them. Very interesting subject. So we got natives. There's actually a guy, he's Taino. I'm trying to remember his name. Actually, let me go back. I also talked to another native scholar. He passed away, but I came across him, Dr. Jack D. Forbes, professor, scholar. He even agrees with Dr. Randy Woodley in saying that the natives, especially even Mexican natives, most of them, he says they weren't even pantheists. They were what's called panentheists. So, and even Miguel Leon Portilla says that, although a lot of these neo-scholars out here are trying to dismiss everything Miguel Leon Portilla wrote about, but there's some truth to what he actually wrote and has, wrote in his books like Aztec Thought and Culture and everything. Miguel Leon Portilla argues for the Creator, and in some of his essays I came across that are not in his books, he argues that the natives of Mexico were panentheists. And if you guys don't know what the difference between panentheists and pantheists is, pantheists just believe like in just the universe and that's it, you know. Whereas panentheists believe, okay, the universe, there is a creator, there's a source to all of this reality here. And everything that exists is somehow intertwined and somehow comes from the creator or the origin of the universe. And there's even Christian panentheists as well. You know, there's a whole thing called process studies. I actually dug into some of that as well. Attended some of the conventions and everything. Process theology, process philosophy, process theology. And one of the main guys is a long time ago. He wrote a book on this, and his name is Alfred Whitehead. He was a mathematician and theologian as well. And he basically argues for a Christian panentheism, where there's God and then there's everything that exists, and all of this basically everything is kind of like, for example, you have the clock maker and the clock, right? And so the clock maker makes this clock, right? And you can't say that the clock maker and the clock are separate and somehow they have no interaction or relation with each other. Obviously, when we look at the clock, we see the design there. We see, there must have been some kind of intelligence behind all this. And we look at the clock, and it basically has the imprints of, the intelligence of, the clockmaker. So the way we see it is that God has, everything that's been created. God has been involved with everything out here. Everything that exists to keep things going, everything is, God is basically somehow involved. And there's even scripture that even talks about that, where God is everywhere, in some sense. And so the way Christian panentheists see the reality in the world is that God is not, completely separate from creation. And where the difference between us is the pantheists worship creation, right? And Paul warns against that. Whereas the panentheists acknowledge, okay, we have creation here, and just observe the natural world around us, and and we conclude that there is the source of all this, the creator, and so somehow God's fingerprints are involved in all of creation. And some even say that his divinity, like his power, right? Even the whole, everything about life here, how things are in existence is because of God's divinity and power. So we kind of see it as that Christian panentheist. Now there's Christians out here who oppose Christian panentheism, and they try to debunk that as well. A lot of them are the Calvinists. As you guys don't know, I don't agree with Calvinism completely as well, and some of their theologies. But there's even some panentheists that I don't always agree with too, in Christian panentheists, because some of them get very liberal on certain issues. But it's an interesting theology, and it's very similar to even native worldviews as well. So there is a common bridge between Christianity and native worldviews, and it's panentheism. There's even a new theology called open theism that's very interesting, and I kind of take a look into that as well. A lot of Calvinists don't like open theism, but it's very interesting theology. I like to go into theologies. There's a theology called negative theology and positive theology. So a lot of the negative theology is, there's certain fancy words for it. I forgot the exact words for it. But there's, I think a lot of the Greek Orthodox people believe in the negative theology, where they basically see like human reason is limited, right? Human reason is limited, and so any description of God is somehow limited, right? We can try to use reason to try to understand who God might be, right? But God is too big for our puny little minds, right? Too big for our puny little brains, right? Our reasoning, right? Our reasoning has limits in some sense, kind of like the scientific method. It's limited to the natural world, right? But when it comes to the supernatural, the metaphysical, when it comes to even trying to understand God, then that's where reason is limited. So, so that's an interesting take there. It's almost the view that God as the great mystery, right? Einstein believed God as the great mystery. He even talked about scientific knowledge and reason goes only so far, but at the edge of reason lies the great mystery, and he said that's where he believes God was at. So, interesting take on that. Although some say that Einstein was a pantheist, I'm not too sure if that's even quite true, because he admitted that at the edge of reason lies the great mystery, and this is where God exists, right? The great mystery. Native Americans, some tribes believe in the great mystery as well. And even in Scripture, Paul addressed some of the Greeks, and some of the Greeks said they had a statue to the unknown God, right? And Paul talks about this, and so there is a general idea of God existing, the Creator existing, right? And so that's what negative theology is acknowledging, that God is beyond our human comprehension. And then there's a positive theology, which I like, and it's the revelation of this great mystery. And Jesus Christ came to reveal that great mystery. And so people around the world had a sense that there is a God, there's a creator, right? Source of everything, right? Even I would say even the Taoists, how they believe the Tao, right? The Tao is everything and pretty much the origin of everything, right? And the Tao is unspeakable in some sense, beyond even what we even think of or even say. That's very close to even negative theology right there. And there's even Platonists who believe all this stuff too, and a lot of decolonizing brown people out here like to say, oh, we got to reject everything that Europeans even believe in, right? But then it's like there's certain universals that are common amongst natives and Europeans, Africans, everybody else. And there is a sense that there is a creator. There's a God, there's a source to everything. Whether you want to think the origin is some ultimate absolute reality, such as the Tao, such as Theos, or you want to view the origin as a personified creator with a personality. And so negative theology it explains certain things. That's pretty interesting. So the positive theology here, I like it as well, because Jesus Christ came to reveal God, right? He came to reveal. He says, if you see me, you've seen the Father, right? And what did Jesus actually teach? He taught everything what God is all about. You know, God loves his children, right? He spread peace, overcame evil with good. God is good, right? That's what the scripture says. God is love, right? You know, so basically Jesus came and revealed, and he showed not only through his wisdoms and teaching, but through his power as well. Healing the sick, supernatural divinity right there. Casting demons out, right? And even his resurrection. And his resurrection actually makes him unique. All these New Agers come out and say, oh, Jesus is equivalent to the Buddha and to Muhammad and Krishna and everybody else. No, Jesus is the only one with historical evidence of being, you know, getting, he's the only one that resurrected. The Buddha, you ask the Buddha, I studied a lot of Buddhism. I actually specialized in Eastern philosophy, right? The Buddha, when you asked him about the afterlife, he says, oh, I'm not too sure. I have no, basically, I have no idea what the afterlife is all about, you know? And originally, Buddhism was not a religion. It was more like a philosophy, right? And so it later turned into a religion. But the Buddha never knew anything about the afterlife, and he was honest about it and admitted to it, right? And so and the Buddha never resurrected, right? And what's it called? Reincarnation is not resurrection. And the whole reincarnation has its problems too. I have issues with that as well. There's actually philosophical challenges to the whole concept of reincarnation. I believe in reincarnation to some extent, where the body goes to the earth, right, and becomes part of the earth. I call it more like regeneration, not really reincarnation, but where the body kind of like goes back to the earth, and you know, we're made of, our body is made of the elements. Even the Bible talks about that. You know, Adam and Eve were created, right, from the earth. So our body goes back to the earth, and from dust we came, and from dust we go, right? But here's the problem with reincarnation. I believe in the soul, and the soul goes back to the Creator. And this is, a lot of this is universal, right? You know, I've been reading some native theologies, native beliefs out here, and a lot of them do believe that you go back to the Creator. And so this whole belief that, we become other animals and plants and all that, I question a lot of that. And it doesn't even make sense, even numerically. I mean, especially when it comes to giving birth to new humans and all that, and new humans coming about, and the whole population. I mean, just think about that. Like, there's always new souls coming in and leaving the earth, right? But that's a whole different topic right there. But I just don't agree with the whole reincarnation thing right there. So I'm just talking a lot about apologetics right now, general apologetics, and I'm right here presenting a Chicano urban apologetics, where it's kind of Chicano perspective, a native perspective, from a decolonial perspective, and it's also Christian as well. So here's a problem though. A lot of times people in the brown communities, when you say you're Christian, they think you're Republican, right? They think you're a white supremacist. They think you think like the rest of them, right? Or they put you in a box that you're a liberal, right? That you're all into this non-binary stuff, and you know you're all in you know, you believe in everything the Democrats believe. So as a Chicano urban apologist, I don't agree with the Republican type of thinking and the Democrat type of thinking. And a lot of times it's like we try to keep it biblical, right? We try to keep it biblical and stick to the wisdom of Christ as much as possible. And letting God lead you with his oh wow, there's no audio. Something happened here. Hello? Can people hear me? Okay, I think I got a issue with the whole hello, can you there's no audio. Can people hear me? I'm getting messages that there's no audio, so let me get back into this. Hello? Yeah, hello, is anybody there? Can people hear me here? Okay, I'm getting some weird chats right now. Not too sure what exactly happened here. Okay, so maybe I have to, yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, so this is what happened with this live stream today. Might have to take it down. Yeah, oh, okay, you hear it? Oh, okay, thank you for your confirmation. So yeah, I got a message saying that people can't hear me. So thank you for confirming it. Righteous through Christ. So back to Chicano urban apologetics. So we're not your typical urban apologists out here. There's a whole urban apologist movement. A lot of it's from a black perspective, and the black community, black Christians are, you know, in a sense they're kind of conscious, but they also they respond to the conscious community, especially the black conscious community, and how they use a lot of sources. The black conscious community, they use a lot of New Ager sources, Masonic sources. They start promoting a lot of pseudoscience, stuff like the Da Vinci Code, the Zeitgeist stuff, the crucified saviors and all that pseudoscience. So the black urban apologists are doing a good job there, and they're addressing a lot of the issues of the black conscious community, you know. And I also work with some of them as well, you know. I come from a native Chicano perspective, so I'm actually advocating this out here. Oh, it cut off? Hello? Can you guys hear me again? I see it. Let's see here. Yeah, it's just, can you guys hear me? Hello? Can you guys hear me here? Okay. Yeah, because it's crazy because I'm talking about stuff and sharing knowledge, and I guess it's blocking me. Maybe, you know, maybe something's going on. It's kind of weird. And this is a new. I'm using a new stream. I was using StreamYard, but they were limiting me. They saying, "Oh, okay, you're doing too many live streams, and so now I'm on like Streamlabs. So, but then this funny stuff is going on with the audio. Whenever you guys, if you guys somehow, if you don't hear me, just send me a message there. But back to Chicano Urban Apologetics. So I'm actually promoting this, that Chicanos start getting into this and start promoting this, because the younger generations out here, a lot of them are becoming atheists. They're getting brainwashed by the New Agers out here. They're getting brainwashed by the Black Conscious movement, and they're not too well educated on brown theology. And a good start with a brown theological perspective is get a book called Brown Church by Dr. Robert Romero, and he gives you the history of kind of like the decolonial social justice history of the brown church. Because a lot of times the brown conscious community, the decolonial native communities, they paint all of Christianity as bad and evil. Oh, it's the white man's religion, right? And but that book right there, including other brown liberation theologies, native liberation theologies, even black liberation theology, will go into the facts and truth, and they do acknowledge the colonialism and the white supremacy of the European white churches, but they'll tell you also that the liberation and social justice by brown Christians, black Christians, native Christians, and even some white Christians who were involved in opposing colonialism and fighting against slavery and colonialism and everything. So we don't hear about that. We don't hear about that in the brown conscious communities. We don't hear about that in the Chicano studies. None of that. So it's important. But now there's a new movement, though, at my university where I graduated, UCLA. Now there's research now where they're embracing a decolonial Chicano, research of Christianity. So now there's breakthroughs occurring, and it's good to know that. But so I'm probably the only Chicano urban apologetics guy out here, and I actually advocate that more of you get into that, and there's a lot of resources. If you just came in, read. Actually, I didn't even write my details though, because I'm using a different stream. But you can contact me if you want some resources on Instagram. Just look up the Conscious Chikano. You can send me a message there. But from a Chicano urban apologetics perspective, I deal more with the brown conscious community and a lot of their misinformation and how they dismiss all of Christianity. And what I do is I get into those topics, and there's a lot of things that they say about Christianity and why they reject Christianity, and I actually and a lot of it is based on misinformation or half-truths, right? And they've been reading a lot of what the white atheists are saying, the white Masons, the white liberals, and they get their information from that, or even from their communist, atheist, Chicano professors out there who are anti-God, right? And that's what happens out here. But definitely, let me see if I can actually respond to some of the comments here. Thank you. I guess everyone can hear me here. So I think I'll be making more videos on different topics when it comes to Chicano urban apologetics. But sometimes I'll be talking about other topics as well, just general topics. And sometimes I'll come off with the Chicano urban apologist, topics as well. And there's so much of that. A lot of people say, oh, how can you be Chicano or native and Christian at the same time? You're following the white man's religion, or you're following something of the Middle East, right? Let's just follow our epistemology, our knowledge, and that's it, right? And a lot of the brown communities get very tribal, right? Where it's like, okay, it's just my tribe and that's it, nothing else. It doesn't matter if you have truth or you speak truth. No, it has to be just my truth only. That's the closed-mindedness that we have right here, this tribal thinking out here. And the way I am is truth is universal. Truth is universal. God is universal. The Creator is universal, right? Like I just mentioned earlier, everyone has a sense that there's an origin to everything, that God exists, right? Or there's this absolute reality. When you look into the whole Big Bang Theory, right? It's like, where did everything come from, right? There has to be a source, right? And this is where, even the atheists will have to acknowledge that, okay, there might be a possibility of God, of a creator. They have to turn. It's not even rational. Like when you claim with absolute knowledge that there is no creator, you're taking a leap of faith, right? You're taking a leap of faith. So the atheist, when it comes to reason, has to shift and become an agnostic. And there's actually a guy. He's a professor. He calls himself the Christian atheist. And he's not an atheist, but he's a Christian. He used to be an atheist, and he knows all their arguments and all their reasoning. And he says atheists, they have to, they can't be an atheist when it comes to reason, because they cannot claim that God does not exist with absolute knowledge and certainty. So they have to acknowledge that, okay, there has to be a middle ground where there might be a possibility that a creator does exist, which is human reason alone, right? But then that's when someone who believes in God can come in and say, well, I choose to believe in the creator, the possibility of God existing, and they give all the reasons why, right? Their supernatural experiences, their divine revelation, their study of Jesus, their study of all of reality, and concluding there has to be the creator in some sense, just studying the Big Bang, studying apologetics, even studying philosophy. Sometimes philosophers who are atheists end up believing in God. Early philosophers believed in God, right? Then you got these brown indigenous people. Oh, but those are white men. Those are Europeans. No, natives believed in God too, the Creator. That's why you got some tribes saying there's a great mystery, right? So definitely, God, the Creator, is universal. So definitely. So let me go to some of the comments. Let's see here. It's okay. So somebody righteous through Christ quoted a scripture in Job. It says, "Canst thou by searching find out God? Canst thou find out the Almighty unto perfection?" it is as high as heaven. What canst thou do? Deeper than hell, what canst thou know? Okay, interesting. And so a lot of that, it seems like it's like the King James version, right? A lot of the Old English. Let's see. High as heaven, and what canst thou do deeper? Yeah. Basically, it's saying God is everywhere. It's like he's God is easily, you could, you search for God and you'll find God. Definitely, God is everywhere. Omnipresent, right? In theology, we call it omnipresent, right? God is everywhere. Definitely. Romans. Okay, so when you write down scriptures, maybe you want to write the whole scripture out so we can actually read it, because there's so many scriptures to memorize and everything. But definitely write the whole scripture out. But let's see. Somebody came in and wrote some weird comments, so I don't see that relevant to the chat. So, and then the person came out and said, hello to the chat panel, let me in, I need to be interviewed, and then I'll be in there about an hour or less. Yeah, so I'm using actually a different platform. Yeah, just delete that. It's, I don't know, it looks like spam, or some people just coming in and saying some irrelevant things to the topic. Thank you, Casual Conversation. I'm not too sure if this person is legit or what. At this point, I can't really invite people, because I have to figure out how to invite them to come on video, because I'm using a new streamer right now. I was aware, I knew how to do it with StreamYard, but I'm on Streamlabs, so I have to figure this out. I'm new to Streamlabs. But I'll figure it out later on, so I'll have some chat interviews in the future. Message me on Instagram, look up the Conscious Chicano, and maybe I can do an interview with you, okay? Or if you want to do an interview with me as well, and it could be on different topics, because me, I just like pushing consciousness on different topics out here. So I'll give you a brown conscious perspective out here on different things. But yeah, that's what I'll be doing with different videos out here, just making different videos on different topics, addressing some of the misinformation out here, deception, the mainstream status quo and their corruption. But I have to be careful though. I can't talk about certain topics, so you can find me on Rumble or Twitter getting deeper on certain topics. But right here on YouTube, and you're limited. You can't talk about everything out here because they'll censor you. I heard before, I was making videos on different topics and they were censoring me. They're giving me strikes. So I know they it's kind of like the thought police here. You guys ever read the book 1984? We have the thought police regulating social media. So that's part of the problem out here. So that's what happens when, it's like they want you to think a certain way and they don't want you to question them. So definitely, that's cool. Thank you, Righteous Through Christ, for coming in. If you guys have any more questions on this topic, let me know. Send me a question right there in the chat. And definitely, so I'll be talking more on these topics, and there's so many topics on relating to Chicano urban apologetics. we have to deal in the Conscious Chicano community. There's so many different movements there. You got Chicano atheists, you got Chicano pantheists, Chicano New Agers, you got Chicano non-binary, you have these, what else? Chicano Democrats. I mean, you got so many people, you know, who've been influenced out here by different types of thinking out here. And as a conscious Chicano, I come out and critique some of that. And I critique some of this misinformation out here coming from these camps out here. And I'm just like, okay, let's get into the truth. Let's get into let's dig into these subjects, you know. A lot of times they accuse of Christianity of being the white man's religion, promoting, and they claim the Bible is full of contradictions. They claim the Bible advocates slavery. They claim the Bible is anti-woman. It's just a lot of things that they usually learn all this from a lot of from these Masonic cults, these New Ager cults, these atheists, and they come out with that kind of information. But as the urban apologetics community, we actually debunk a lot of that, you know. And, you know, there's evidence in the Bible that this type of slavery that people think about as slavery is not what the Bible even actually advocated. And actually the Bible advocates for people to become free and liberated, right? And this is what actually a lot of the black abolitionists, as well as that white abolitionists, they saw the social justice of the Bible, and that's why they said that that's why they fought against slavery, right? Because, you know, Africans who were enslaved were God's children as well, you know, and they should be respected as such. Even Paul challenged, you know, some of the slave institutions in Rome. And he was basically telling the slave master, a lot of people take a certain scripture out of context and try to say, oh, look, Paul was advocating slavery. No, he wasn't. He was basically telling the slave master, you know, to treat his slave as a brother, right? As Jesus has, you know, basically how Jesus would actually treat others, to serve, to love, to have hospitality. He was challenging the institution of slavery in the Bible, you know, and so that you know, there's evidence that the Bible was not promoting the type of chattel slavery of, you know, the way the Africans were enslaved by the white man, right? And then also, if you look into the Old Testament, the slavery of the Old Testament is not the same as chattel slavery as, you know, what the African Americans went through. I mean, the Africans, it was more like debt bondage, and there was certain protections, you know, certain things. And matter of fact, there's actually a scholar named Dr. Paul Copan, and he talks about this in his books, that the surrounding communities of that time, you know, because you had the Jewish community, and then you had the Jewish community of the Old Testament, and then you had surrounding pagan communities, and they were very harsh on their slaves. Their slaves didn't have much rights, whereas the Jews actually gave so-called slaves who were actually kind of like they were in debt bondage instead. They gave them a lot of rights, humane rights. And there's even a time called Jubilee where you could get out of your debt bondage and you're no longer a slave. So the Jewish practices of the Old Testament, you cannot say that it was the same as the slavery that the white man enforced on the Africans here, or even the natives, because the white man did enslave natives out here and also did the same thing to them as well. But what they call slavery in the Bible was not actual slavery. It was more like debt bondage. And then in the New Testament, Paul challenged all that, and he was not talking about the slavery of chattel slavery. He was talking about debt bondage. That's what it was. And there's also even scripture that says that we are all slaves. We're either slaves to righteousness or wickedness in some sense, so in a sense it's like there's kind of like a form of slavery no matter what, it's like, okay, and it's like, okay, are you going to be a slave to goodness, to righteousness, to love and peace? I'd rather be that kind of slave, right, than to be a slave to the wickedness out here, to the devil and all that, causing destruction and everything. So the whole slavery topic is definitely needs to be addressed, especially in these conscious communities, because even the brown conscious communities are influenced by the black conscious communities. So this is why I address the brown and the black conscious communities when it comes to these topics, And the whole topic of there being, the Bible's anti-woman. No, that's not true either. There's evidence of women having status in Jesus' ministry. There's prophetess as well. Women who spread the gospel. There was women in the Old Testament and New Testament who had status as well, who knew God. So we can't say that the Bible's anti-woman. And they like to take Paul's scriptures out of context and say, look at him, he's a sexist. Well, that's not what he's saying. He was addressing a certain community at that time, and what was going on there. He wasn't making it a universal maxim, So he was just addressing what was going on, but he was not anti-woman. He actually advocated, certain women, and started promoting them, and they were involved in his, in ministry as well. So we can't say the Bible's anti-woman, So, and then there's the accusation, I forgot what it was. I mentioned slavery, anti-woman. What else? There was some other one. It's a common accusation that they have towards Christianity. Maybe some of you can actually think of it. Is Christianity the white man's religion? Actually, I'm involved in the Good Medicine Way. It's kind of like a native ministry. And we have a contextualization, decolonization, native perspective, and we're Christians, right? We follow Jesus, right? The Jesus way, right? And there's actually a scholar that came in named Dr. Bantu, and he's all into the Ethiopian, kind of like Middle Eastern, early Christianities and their histories. And he talks about how many people don't even know that there's non-Western Christianities that existed, that still exist to this very day. Christianity was in Africa, Ethiopia, the Middle East, Persia, right? And went into Asia, you know, and so many people don't even know that, you know. And there's a history of early non-Western Christianities, and people think, oh, the Christianity is the white man's religion, right? No, it's not. Now, the Christianity that was brought to the Americas, a lot of it was the white man's religion. It was intertwined with white supremacy and statism. It was a corrupt version of Christianity. And it started when the church merged with the state, ever since Constantine started injecting his political power and his corruption. The early church wasn't even about imperialism and war and conquering and enslaving people. The early church followed the teachings of Christ. And when Jesus ministered to people, you know, when he evangelized, he wasn't like a colonial missionary, right? With the colonial missionaries out here in the Americas, they enslaved the natives, they made them cut their hair off, and they punished them and forced them into, you know, slave type like conditions. Whereas Jesus, when he ministered to people, he evangelized, he spread his love and peace and wisdom, you know, and you see that the way Jesus spread the gospel was different from the way the missionaries, you know, they spread their message, which wasn't really, it wasn't according to Jesus' actions, right? Now, I'm not going to say all missionaries are bad, because I've actually came across evidence that there's some missionaries who were not colonial, who were not out there trying to colonize in some sense. Like, they weren't trying to enslave natives. They were actually trying to help them in some sense, in terms of like, there was times where they needed, food and different things like that, you know. So some of them were authentic and really following true Christianity, you know, and even sided with the natives and defended them against oppression and slavery. So we can't label all missionaries as bad and evil and colonial. Some of them were doing good things. They were following Christ authentically. So we got to know about that, you know. So as a decolonial, conscious Chicano urban apologist, I make distinctions between two types of Christianities. One is what they call Christendom, colonial Christianity, white supremacist Christianity, statist Christianity, right? Theocracies, right? Versus the real gospel of Christ, the real teachings of Christ, the real actions of Christ, right? The behaviors of Christ, you know? The early church, before they joined Constantine, the early church in its purity in some sense. The early churches, Paul had issues with some of the churches too. Some of them, they became Christian, right? But then they didn't want to leave their corruption, so they still had bad habits, right? So I'm not saying the early church was perfect, right? But I think Jesus is the standard of it all, you know? So we can look at the life of Jesus and his words, and he's the example for us to live by, you know? Not anybody else. Jesus is the standard. So just remember that there's the true Christianity of Jesus, right? Versus the white man's colonial Christianity out here. We have to make that distinction. Now, a lot of brown folks out here don't want to make that distinction. And they dismiss all Christianity as corrupt and bad and, and evil. And a lot of it is because of misinformation, of what they read and what they've been told. A lot of their sources come from atheists, New Agers, Masons, You know, people who have agendas that, to undermine, to not believe in God. A lot of times, sometimes they're non-binary. They don't want to live a heterosexual life, right? So there's always agendas behind a lot of times. I find out a lot of times people reject Christianity because they have certain agendas, and you got to find out those agendas. But let's get to the truth and the facts. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, right? His example, his wisdom, his actions is the authentic gospel, right? He is the word. He is the gospel, right? The good news versus the colonial colonizer, right? The colonial colonizer came and he disguised himself. He called himself Christian, right? And I think this is one of the biggest deceptions around. The Bible talks about the devil coming as an angel of light, or they say a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? He came in and cloaked himself in Christianity, called himself a Christian, and then used people to commit atrocities, to enslave, to murder, and all that. And because of that, now many don't want to accept, they don't want to hear the gospel. They don't want to hear about Jesus because of the colonial past. Many natives don't like Christianity because of what happened because of the white man. And what I say is, don't blame Jesus for what the white man did, right? Let's hold the white man accountable for what he did. And the way my belief is, if you're a true Christian, you're going to follow Christ. You're not going to be out there enslaving, taking people's lands, committing genocide. You're not going to be doing all that. So my thing is, a lot of the colonizers were not true Christians. And I even think of the possibility that they weren't even saved. Because if you're saved and you're following Christ, you're going to be a peacemaker. You're going to, spread love, truth, compassion, peace, You're going to follow the true teachings of Christ. So I doubt that even some of these colonizers were true Christians. And I'm not saying all of them. Like I said, there was some missionaries. Not all. There was a lot of bad missionaries, but there was some good missionaries who were fighting for justice, social justice, who were fighting for the indigenous rights. Those European Christians here too. A lot of the abolitionists who fought against ending the institution of slavery. What's interesting? There's a guy there's a African scholar from Stanford. He, Dr. Sowell, he has a section in his book on black slavery around the world. Interesting, he says that no other religion in the world ended institutional slavery. None of them. The only one that did was Christianity. He says that's the only one that ended institutional slavery. That's a very interesting fact, because slavery even existed before Christianity, before all that. You had Muslims enslaving people. You had slavery throughout the world, in Asia, India, Africa, Europe. You had slavery even in the Americas. There's a book called The Other Slavery. It goes into that, how even some natives here had slaves. They were enslaving each other, right? And then when the Europeans came, they kind of made it even worse. They globalized it, right? They created a big market of slavery. And so And it's true, the Europeans made it even worse, right? They globalized it. And, but slavery exists throughout the world, but it was Christianity that ended institutional global slavery. Although there's some parts of the world that still enslave people, but in general, like a lot of the slavery that was mainstream and globalized was destroyed by Christians. And it's because it was God that convicted them and said, you know what, this is enough, that's it, no more, you guys got to stop this. God, I guess they started really getting convicted and saying this is brutality. God was convicting them, and so they ended that institutional slavery. And this is what the black conscious community, the brown conscious community don't talk about, right? And I like that Dr. Sowell from Stanford talks about this in his book. You can even find his audio on YouTube somewhere. But it's interesting there. So I have let's see. So casual conversations. That's a good comment. She said that there were priests in Mexico that went up in arms to defend the people from the Spanish. Yeah, and that's true. There's some priests that got involved, and there was a real, even popular one from El Salvador. I forgot his name, but he was killed. He was defending the indigenous people there. So definitely. We had, some priests and even some lay people, and also even Protestants out here too, who were involved in the abolitionist movement as well. You had Baptists, you had different denominations of Christians out here who were involved in social justice and freedom, and even the Chicano movement. You had, various Christian denominations involved in facilitating the Chicano movement and fighting for Chicano rights, fighting against discrimination, fighting for equality. And nobody talks about that, So even back in the colonial times, we had Christians who opposed the brutality of colonialism. And even in the Chicano movement, we had Christians involved in the Chicano movement. So we've always been there, right? But the atheists, the New Agers, the conspiracy theorists, the black conscious movement, the brown conscious movement, the communists, the socialists, all these guys don't want to acknowledge. They don't want to acknowledge our involvement in liberation and justice and righteousness, But there is a history of that, and nobody really talks about that. Anyways, I see my phone on my Instagram shut down, so I guess I needed to charge it. But anyways, I guess I'm going to end it here. I'm glad you guys joined me in the conversation. Stay tuned. I'll be creating more Chicano urban apologetics, from a Chicano perspective, a decolonial liberation theology, a brown theology, a Chicano theology, a native theology, and making videos on different topics as I go. Anyways, you guys have a good day.